This video is part of the Director Project, a monthly video essay series analyzing various directors and their films. You'll find a playlist with more videos on our Director of the Month from all sorts of creators in the description below. There is an interesting contradiction at the heart of Hayao Miyazaki's filmography. On the one hand, the man is an outspoken pacifist of stern anti-war principles, a perspective frequently reflected in his protagonists. But on the other hand, many of Miyazaki's best movies are action films, largely defined by their imaginative depictions of violent conflict. Like Akira Kurosawa before him, Miyazaki may abhor violence, but is exceedingly skilled at rendering it on screen. This tension does manifest itself throughout Miyazaki's work, such as in the peaceful protagonist who must navigate violent conflict in Nausicaa and Princess Mononoke, the conflicting approaches to vengeance in Howl's Moving Castle, or in the very soul of Jiro Horikoshi, the brilliant engineer who sees his passions used to make war machines in The Wind Rises. But can we also detect traces of Miyazaki's pacifist ideology in the action scenes themselves? That's the question I aim to address today by analyzing one of Miyazaki's most unabashed pieces of action-adventure filmmaking, Castle in the Sky. Set in a fictionalized 19th century, Castle in the Sky follows the adventures of Shida and Pazu as they seek the mysterious kingdom of Laputa while trying to keep its power out of the hands of a mysterious military force led by the quiet Colonel Mushka. In its basic story beats, the film follows Miyazaki's usual structure for implementing pacifist themes. According to Michael Wilson, Miyazaki's pacifism emerges in his films in three key ways. First, he creates protagonists with various levels of pacifism. Second, his antagonists are complex and three-dimensional characters. And third, something of value is corrupted by warfare. All three of these factors are seen in Castle in the Sky. Regarding the protagonists, Shida outlines that while she was taught a spell of destruction as a child, it was in the hopes that she need not use it, while Pazu's primary goal throughout the film is merely to assist Shida in escaping the agents and finding Laputa. Neither character ever seeks violence. This is in stark contrast to Colonel Mushka. Within the pantheon of Miyazaki antagonists, Mushka is perhaps closest to an unambiguously evil villain. While characters like Kashani or Lady Eboshi acted immorally from relatively defensible and even sympathetic positions, Colonel Mushka's desire to use Laputa's advanced weaponry to conquer the world is a lot more simplistic. But there are subtle layers to how Miyazaki depicts his villainy. Early scenes with the character don't leave much of an impression. He just seems like a bit of a dorky, man-in-a-suit type antagonist, lacking in any real menace. But the closer Mushka gets to his end goal, the more vile and ruthless he becomes, finally revealing the full extent of his megalomania as he seizes Laputa's weapons and unleashes them upon his own men. Furthermore, despite the unambiguous horrors he plans to unleash, Mushka cloaks his evils under the guise of reclaiming his heritage and birthright as a part of Laputa's royal line. Even in a relatively simplistic character, Miyazaki reflects the ways in which violent ends are often disguised under the facades of banality and national pride. And finally, something is indeed corrupted by warfare, and that is the very kingdom of Laputa, the once mighty society having destroyed itself. An event Mushka's ambitions seem destined to repeat. Castle in the Sky, then, is clearly aligned with the pacifist leanings in Miyazaki's filmography. How, then, do these themes manifest themselves in the action? First off, let's highlight the action scenes within the film. By my count, there are 10. The opening siege on Mushka's ship, the marketplace punch-out, the three-way chase through the railroad track, the capture in the field, the robot's destructive assault on the castle, the aerial battle in stormy weather, the looting of Laputa, Shida's capture, Mushka unleashing Laputa's weapons, and the final cat-and-mouse showdown between Shida, Pazu, and Mushka. So the movie is full of action of all different types and scale, but throughout them all, there are observable pacifist tendencies. Most prominently, the heroes of the film never seek violence. While the military and the pirates may be armed to the teeth and ready to do some damage, the film's heroes are always trying to escape from violence, abandoning Mushka's ship, fleeing from their pursuers, and perhaps most defiantly, actively obstructing violence when they can. Even when Pazu is given a gun to save Shida from Mushka, he only uses the weapon to make new paths through the kingdom, never actually turning it against a person. Now there are two major exceptions, where our heroes do act violently, but we're going to put a pin in those for now. What's important is that throughout the action, Shida and Pazu resist violent solutions when possible. Miyazaki also depicts action in a way which undercuts violence. This is most obvious in the fistfight between the pirates and Mr. Duffy. Seemingly the most viscerally violent physical encounter, Miyazaki instead focuses on this ostentatious display of masculinity as the characters flex. It's a ridiculous parody of machismo, further reinforced by Duffy's wife Akami teasing her husband's manly facade.
I'm not mending that, I hope you know.
Notice too how the line draws attention to traditionally defined women's work, further undercutting Duffy's macho posturing.
He said Mom was ugly, now go get her!
The violence is not only undercut through humor, but the scene on the whole makes a mockery of the desperate displays of masculine bravado which underlie violent conflict, robbing both men of any power. Then there's the robots' rampage in the castle, one of the most intense and even frightening scenes in the film, but one ultimately lacking in any real violence. For all the robots' destructive capabilities, it doesn't actually hurt anyone. The only damage is to property, and by the end, it's clear that the robot was only trying to free itself from captivity in order to save Shida. Despite a lack of fire and explosions, this simple moment when Mushka corners Shida and demands she reveal Laputa's secrets is way more violent than anything the robot does. As implied here and later confirmed upon arrival in Laputa, the robot's destructive qualities are brought on in response to human violence. Ordinarily, they're quite peaceful. Well, at least when they're not kidnapping Mr. Freeze from prison.
Guard!
So we have destruction of property distinguished from abuse inflicted upon people, humorous mockeries of violent machismo, and a pair of heroes who avoid violence whenever possible. All seem to reinforce Miyazaki's own pacifism. But of course, there are two exceptions to our hero's aversion to violence, and they actually bookend the movie. While the dramatic thrust of the opening may be the shootout between pirates and military, the most significant detail is Shida smashing Mushka with a bottle in order to escape. And at the end of the film, Shida finally uses the destruction spell to destroy Laputa's weapons, and presumably kill Mushka. In both cases, Miyazaki does obscure the violence, suggesting it's something he doesn't wish to dwell on. He crucially cuts before the moment of impact in the opening, and we don't actually see Mushka's death. He just kind of wanders off in pain, to presumably die horribly off camera. But even if Miyazaki chooses to look away, he still chooses to have Shida inflict violence on someone. These breaks from an otherwise absolute pacifism are essential. Absolute pacifism is the position that there are no circumstances in which any form of violence is ethically sound. And while the film does generally advocate for non-violent solutions, it also dramatizes the main tensions within this absolutist perspective. First, that violence as a means of self-defense in an emergency is morally permissible. Second, a consequentialist argument that a morally objectionable act is justifiable on the grounds that it produces a positive outcome. And these track with the rest of Miyazaki's filmography and his many heroes who, while espousing peace, will protect their own safety and fight against oppression. The action scenes in Castle in the Sky may lament violence, but in their lamentation, we also see Miyazaki's bitter acceptance that if pacifism means surrendering your personal autonomy or allowing mass murder, then it cannot be absolute. If you're a Miyazaki fan who wants to contribute to this series, I'd encourage you to do so. Just tweet the link to your video to @cultpopsure on Twitter and we'll be happy to add you. And quick PS to this video, while I use the dub version for the sake of convenience in editing, if you've never seen Castle in the Sky before, please watch it with subtitles. It is a much, much better experience.